All right. Good morning, everybody. It's still Monday, right? So Ben Trader coming on here. Obviously, we'll be keeping an eye out on the markets as they are under pressure. Not really seeing any signs of buyers stepping in here. 6,000, the selling cooled off, but we'll continue to track this moving forward and look for any potential breakdowns while we're on with our man Carmine Atteo. Carmine, how are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good, Gavin. How about yourself?
Oh, can't complain. Can't complain. How are the tables this weekend? Did you
Oh,
peel any
pretty good.
fish?
It's yeah, it was pretty. It was a pretty good session. This is the golden time right here between right after the Super Bowl to Memorial Day. It's a time I live for, so it's very good right now.
Well, I guess
So
there's not much else to do in Illinois with the weather, and
no, that's true.
you start getting those tax refunds, right? And everybody running to the tables
Yeah, they they
with
they
their money.
they offer to cash those for free because they know they're good. So they're like, yeah, cash them for free and let them blow it on the in the
So
casino.
how does that work? Like when they walk in with their checks, you're saying, or do they just got to show their returns and be like, "Hey, this is what I'm going to get"?
Either way, so very few people get checks anymore, but they
Yeah,
give you
that's why I was
yeah
trying to wonder what they were
yeah
cashing.
but so there are some people that get for whatever reason I don't know
Sure.
why yeah but they said they have a sign that says either way if you have your IRS printout whenever you do like a TurboTax thing and it says okay you're getting a refund of this if you show them that that's good they'll give you chips and you'll be on your way or they can cash a check for you.
Nice. Those casinos, very enterprising. So, well, that's good to hear. So good to hear that you did well on your stint out there too. So, I know when you're not on the tables, you're watching everything geopolitics. So, we will
Yeah,
break into that next, Carmine. So let's start here by talking a little bit about um, the German election. So we're going to start
yeah.
off on the international side. Obviously, I'm not sure where they rank right now. I think they're the sixth largest economy in the world. Carmine, do I
Yeah,
have that?
fifth or sixth, I think something
Yeah,
like that.
right in that area.
Yeah,
So a lot of meaningful ramifications. Plus, with some of the discussions we've seen around the Trump administration in Europe, certainly takes on an even more important element. So, what happened there, and how does that work for moving forward with Trump here?
yeah. So the polling in Germany was very good. I mean, I think they should import some of their pollsters over here, but because they had
well, well, if the Germans are known for anything, it's efficiency, Carmine, right? So it's
yeah,
good to see them
exactly,
living up to
exactly.
their
So, but
to,
yeah, if you look at the latest poll was about 29% for the CFD and 21% for the AFD. CFD is kind of center right, so the more liberal party, so to speak, kind of got thrown out of office with the current situation with the economy and immigration. Merz will become a new chancellor of Germany under this scenario. Uh, the AFD, everybody was kind of watching that number to see what they would get, and they got pretty much exactly what they expected. The initial exit poll was 19.5. I think a lot of people got, oh, okay, they got less than they expected. But once all the votes were officially tallied, it got up to 21%. So, yeah, so they got almost exactly what they were expecting there, and no more, no less. There wasn't really a lot of some of the more further right figures in the U.S. were trying to impact try to get people to vote for AFT. I don't really think that had much of an impact because it basically landed right exactly where
it,
it was.
it is an
Yeah,
interesting aspect, though, Carmine, right? Because I mean, let's say we get Germany out talking about the midterms, right? And
right.
they start dabbling in. I mean, I guess the question is, have they already or always kind of done that, given some of the bluster around Trump, and this is, Trump's reflect, how he reacts to some of that, or do you think that this was a next level step that Musk and some of the others took that could really set a different tone for politics moving forward?
Yeah, it might be another step. I mean, so it just depends on how Europe, responds to it. If they say, "Oh, just throw it under the bed and say, "Oh, forget about it. We're not gonna, uh, or they kind of say, okay, well, we're gonna do the same thing in your midterms. We're gonna try to get people that we like elected, and do unto others what they're gonna do unto you. I mean, that's the same thing happen. It's just a really slippery slope, in my opinion, because some people might like the fact that Elon endorsed a lot of those folks, but then there'll be another Democratic president somewhere down the line where he endorses a lot of folks that you might not like in Germany, and try to influence world politics that way. So I think it's a slippery slope, and hopefully Germany will say, let bygones be bygones, and move on. But if they don't, it could be, like you said, something that we'll have to keep an eye on, and something that gets a little more traction.
Okay. What's Mertz said about Trump, and how do you see this dynamic playing out from here?
Yeah, so he was saying that he wanted more independence from the U.S. after the vote. So we'll see how what he says about that. I mean, that's kind of music to Trump's ears, right? Because he's always saying that Germany should pay for more of their own defense. They should take care of Ukraine, not us, and we should it's so on and so forth. And Trump actually put out a post on Truth Social saying he was very happy with the results. I mean, I think he would have been happier if the AfD won, I think with Merce, I think that's kind of his best he can possibly get at this point. So he's going to meet with a lot of the European leaders this week, and it'll be interesting to see if any of this comes up. But I think that Merce saying that he wants more independence, that I think that might play into Trump's hand a little bit, because he might say, okay, you guys are going to have to pay 5% of GDP for your defense, and so forth and so on. And we'll see if Germany wants to do that, because if they do that, then that's less money that they have for some of their social programs and things like that. So that could be politically detrimental to them if they decide to do that. So we'll see how that works out. I think it's going to be a story that continues on. It's hard to say exactly right now where it'll go.
All right. So we'll continue to watch that unfold here. And Mertz, he's got no interest in dealing with the AfD party for
Exactly,
coalition
exactly.
government, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they kind of had what they call the firewall, right? So they kind of push the AfD to the side, and they're going to do uh, a governmental partnership between them and one of the other parties that won, so they can form a government that way and push them off the side. So he has no interest with them, but some of the things that he has talked about are some of the things that AfD kind of supports, such as the immigration and lower taxes, but they're not taking it to the extreme that AfD is. So you are getting like center right policies if you think about it in the U.S., and not far right policies. You might get like they're not going to deport everybody, right? You might get some tougher immigration controls on the border, and you might get some lower taxes, but it might not be as low as what the AfD would want.
All right. So looking at this, Carmen, one quick question for you. How much is the U.S. given to Ukraine, and how much is Europe given? I don't know if you know those numbers, but
Uh,
I heard somebody say this morning that it was 67 billion for the U.S. and 65 billion for Europe, but I thought we were at around 114 billion. No?
so the State Department said this morning. I saw that headline too. That the State Department said 67, and I had the same reaction you did, because so here's how you got to look at it, right? Because they passed the bills, but the money doesn't get distributed right away. It kind of gets distributed in batches, right? So I think that's where the discrepancy is. You might have passed 114 billion in funding, but it hasn't been actually given to them yet, right? Because they kind of split it up into different segments. So I think that's what, if I look it up right here, how much U.S. is given, uh, so it says Congress appropriate 174 billion through the first five Ukraine supplemental appropriations acts, and so yeah, they say right now the State Department has given 63, but the appropriations are for over 174 billion. So that's what I just found out here if I did a quick Google search. So, but yeah, the State Department, I think, is just going based on what they actually sent out the door, and not what uh, approximately 69.2 military assistance, and there's also a drawdown that they use of 29.8 billion from DoD stockpiles. So I think that's how they're splitting it up. They say we have now used the debt drawdown as well. So if you add those two numbers together, it's a little closer to what you're talking about, and it's a little, but yeah, the 69.2 billion is direct assistance, and 27.688 billion from DoD stockpile. So it's ready. Basically, the funding that was appropriated kind of replenishes those stockpiles, right? So they're given the weapons that we already have, but then the new funding replaces those. So that's how that kind of works out. That's a discrepancy there.
Okay, hold on. Sorry. All right. So moving on, let's talk then, Carmine, about uh, the defense spending. And Pete Hegseth expected to come out with a bit of an updated priority list for military spend. Now, there's been a lot of consternation about a slowdown in military spend, but that's not necessarily the case, right? They're
Yeah,
more or less looking to refocus where they're putting all the all that money. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? What should we be expecting, and how does this work into the upcoming budget negotiations, Carmine?
Yeah, so Secretary Pete Hegseth says he will be refocusing 8% of the existing defense funds to other areas of President Trump's agenda. He said that the Department of Government Efficiency will have access and eliminate, fraud, waste, and abuse, and all that. Uh, but again, all that has to be approved through Congress. So if there's fraud, waste, and abuse that they identify, let's say, hypothetically speaking, they identify like $10 billion worth of what they say is fraud, then Congress has to appropriate it down before they do anything. So whenever you hear all this stuff about Doge, it's very important to note that they're not cutting anything, right? They're just saying, okay, they're identifying this is what they don't like, and then after that, they have to go to Congress and get that money appropriated down lower in the next budget. Now, the next budget. So as far as the Defense Department, before we get to the budget, is that they want to move away from diversity programs, climate programs. They want to focus more on uh, reduce non-essential military exercise, pilot flight hours and training and stuff. It's some other civilian workforce layoffs in the in the Defense Department. Uh, so that they say will they go cut like 8%, but just shift it to other areas. So. But that will have to be approved through Congress. Now, there's a lot of roadblocks to that because the Republican Party is still very much a pro defense party, right? Trump might have tried to switch that a little bit, but I don't think he really has yet, especially with the folks in the Senate. There's a lot of folks in the House that are 100% with him, but there's a lot of folks in the Senate, such as Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina. You also have the gentleman from Mississippi that's also uh, trying to that wants to keep the Defense Department at least currently funded or even up it. So there's several other war hawks, so to speak, too, in the Republican Party that also want to increase defense spending and not cut it. So I think this is going to be something that's going to be an October story. I would be shocked if they get all this together by March 14th. They'll be lucky if they fund the government by March 14th, which we'll talk about in a second. But I don't think they're going to touch any of this by March 14th. I think this will be an October story for the next fiscal year budget, and we'll have to keep an eye out on if any of these cuts will impact the defense names, because the defense names that get hit when these initial headlines came out, you saw Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics all get hit. Panatar, PLTR also got hit a little bit as well. So again, I think this is more bluster because there's a lot of defense hawks right now that are kind of, I think, will stand in the way of this. But this is going to be a story for the fall for sure to keep an eye on if they were able to try to get these cuts or reappropriations, as they call them, into the defense budget. But we'll discuss it further when that comes up for the fall.
All right, Carmine, not to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay, I don't mind.
Um, so, where do you think, if you were investing in defense names, where do you think where would you be eyeing up? Like, are there any names that pop off to you, like Palantir or Huntington Ingalls HII for ships? Is there any area that you're like, oh, I could see? I know Trump's big on that. You've heard him talk a lot over the last 10 years now or so. But is there any names that jump off the page to you that you'd be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely the big guys I think are definitely going to be okay, right? I don't see a big impact to Lockheed or Northrop Grumman or General Dynamics or Palantir. The smaller players you might see some cuts there, but I think the big guys, I think if they dropped, I think that's a buying opportunity in those names because I think by when once we get to the fall, it'll become clear to everybody that there's the defense cuts that they want are not going to materialize, and then you'll see possibly those stocks move higher.
All right, so we'll be keeping an eye out on these names. There's a few, I mean, from a valuation perspective, that look pretty attractive. So we'll be
Sure.
talking a lot more about them moving forward. All right, anything else? Well, I guess Carmine, real last second, what should we be looking for in terms of headlines this week from Hegseth?
So yeah, he already put out his tweet, a video tweet talking about what he wants to do. I don't think you're going to hear much about this right now until the fall, but I think he's going to continue to belabor the point, right? He's still going to say, hey, this is what we want to do. You're going to hear stuff from the Department of Government Efficiency saying, okay, we found like $20 billion of waste, right? That's all well and good, but again, it has to go through Congress. Like they have this like dead clock. They added a Doge thing to the dead clock, which is absolutely meaningless because it doesn't mean anything unless it gets cut by Congress, right? So it's but the key thing is not what Congress appropriates. But you're going to continue to hear the drumbeat from Hegseth over the next couple of weeks, and you continue to hear the drumbeat from Elon Musk and Doge over the next couple of weeks about what's being wasted here, and those stocks could be impacted initially on those types of headlines. But I think again that there'll be a buying opportunity because in the long run, once we get to October and they fund the budget, I would be very surprised if you see an 8% cut in defense spending.
All
But
right.
also what want to say though, if they do want to cut the deficit, there's three things that really are the bang for the buck, right? There's defense, Medicaid, and Medicare, and Social Security, right? Trump has said he doesn't want to touch Social Security or Medicare, right? And they want to do some Medicaid cuts, which are getting in trouble with some of the moderates. But defense cuts, they can get some bang for the buck if they want to do that. But the problem is that there's still a lot of defense hawks in the Senate right now. So.
Right, but some of the areas that you said that they're talking about doing, those defense hawks probably would be okay with that, I'm thinking.
They might be. It just depends on what exactly they want to do. It's
Yeah.
hard to say right now, but the defense appropriation is they call it the National Defense Authorization Act was 895 billion. I would be very surprised if that number is below that for next year. I think it's going to be higher than that. So I think that'll be a positive for those stocks once that comes out in the fall.
All right, we'll be watching that then. Let's take a look at the Trump administration. Obviously, he's been a busy man over the last couple of weeks. Any notable memorandums or tariff comments from the last time we met, Carmine?
Yeah, so of course he signed the memorandum on reciprocal tariffs. These are going to affect on April 2nd. He says. At first he said April 1st, but then he said that was April Fool's Day, so he wanted to make it April 2nd. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I remember we were laughing about that. That's funny that he changed it.
yeah. So, like, so he wants to do it April 2nd now, I guess. He also continued his threats on auto, chip, and pharma tariffs. But to me, the way I read that was that those are all going to be included in the reciprocal tariffs, right? Because if you, for example, there's tariffs that the EU puts on us when we send them a car, right? So that's going to be all included in the reciprocal tariffs. So I think that's what it's going to be end up being just the reciprocal tariffs, and those are probably going to be on for a while. It's interesting too if you look at the Canada and Mexico tariffs, right? Because remember those were delayed a month, and the month is up on March 4th, and so keep an eye out on headlines next week because you're going to hear headlines probably from those countries in Canada, Justin Trudeau, and the Mexican president as well, trying to negotiate with Trump to try to get those either delayed again or canceled altogether. So that's something to keep an eye out for next week, especially the auto names because those are the most exposure to Mexico there. That's something to keep an eye out for next week. Also, the China tariffs, right? So the China tariffs, as you know, were put on February 1st. Apple just made an announcement that they're going to spend $500 billion in the U.S. They're also going to build an AI server plant, I guess you call it, in Houston. So we'll see if that placates Trump enough to where he gives at least Apple an exemption. I think what's going to happen is he's going to say to a lot of these other companies, "Hey, Apple's doing this. Why can't you guys do this?" Right? And I think that's kind of going to be the refrain going on. He's going to go company by company and say, "Hey, Apple's bringing jobs back. They're opening a plant here. Why don't you guys do that? And you guys can avoid the tariffs." So I think that's going to be the scenario going on with these China tariffs. It's going to go company by company, and then once he feels like he has enough, then he'll pull back on them. And I think that's how this is going to play out. Um, from as a political junkie like me, I'll be interested to see what part of Houston gets that plant because there's like 3 or 4 reps in Houston and that are Republicans, and there's a couple reps in Houston as well that are Democrats. So I'll be interested to see what part of Houston gets that plant. But in any event, that's what we have down for the tariffs as well.
So, Carmine, interesting aspect there because obviously Tim Cook met with Trump. Do you think that at any time we're hearing that somebody's going to be meeting with President Trump, that stock's going to perhaps rally in front, expecting some sort of big announcement?
Yeah, I would definitely assume that because especially if they're subject to tariffs, right? Let's say, for example, Ford, right? I'll throw a name out there that's probably of interest, right? Ford, will be heavily impacted by those Mexico tariffs. Their CEO said it would be basically, Armageddon, right? If we had those Mexico tariffs. So if Trump meets with Ford, I would expect a rally in that stock because people would be thinking that they're going to make some kind of deal to where the tariffs would be exempted. So so definitely keep an eye on that, especially depending on how much the company is exposed to tariffs. Let's say he meets with like Meta CEO, or let's say he meets with Zuckerberg, right? Zuckerberg doesn't really have anything to do with the tariffs, so that might not be that substantial. But if he meets with a company that has exposure to tariffs, you can definitely expect the market to anticipate some kind of deal that'll be positive for the stock.
All right. Just keeping a quick eye out here too. S&P back up to 60.20, trying to first meaningful bounce we've seen in it. Still hasn't gotten that volume that would need to recover for some sort of V-shaped rally. So looking for this to hold resistance and maybe another push down to 6,000. But this is the most productive we've seen bulls in a while. All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic. So, the U.S. and Russia agreed to appoint teams to begin working the pathway to end the war. Zelensky and Trump got a little bit of a spat. Basically, what happened was Zelensky said that Trump initially said that Ukraine started the war. His broader point was that the Ukraine started the war, but they should have made a deal to prevent starting the war, and that was interpreted by a lot of people as saying that it was Ukraine's fault. He Trump is has not backed
How's
down
that,
from that.
how's that interpreted elsewise?
No. That's how what in Zelensky interpreted it is. But I'm saying a lot of people on Trump's side are saying that that's it was taken out of context. I just want to give either side here of the
Okay.
argument, but but uh, but yeah, of course, obviously, Russia started the war. I mean that's 100% fact, right? I'm just saying that's kind of how they got into this little spat here, and you know then Trump called Zelensky a dictator because he didn't have an election. Of course, there's always several countries that are attacked, postpone elections, and so forth. So that wasn't really that factual either. So if you so but Zelensky said he would resign if a peace deal is reached with Ukraine. So or if Ukraine were to join NATO. So I think that's something that President Trump would like.
Well, NATO's
He's
off the table, right?
NATO's off the table, yeah. But I'm saying if a peace deal is reached, he liked that part. If he would resign if a peace deal is reached. So Trump is going to meet with his counterparts from France and Ukraine this week to discuss the European security guarantees. According to Wall Street Journal, France and the UK wanted to put up 30,000 troops in Ukraine for as peacekeepers, but they also wanted a U.S. backstop. So basically, what happens is what that means is, let's say, hypothetically speaking, a Russian troop kills a UK troop, then at that point the U.S. will come in and keep the peace as well. We'll see if Trump agrees to that, but I think that's something that Ukraine would definitely would be okay with if they
Where would
have.
this security force be
Uh,
in Ukraine or like
yeah,
in Poland on the border there?
I think in Ukraine, they would, according to Wall Street Journal, they said that they would employ 30,000 peacekeepers in Ukraine. So from UK and France, and there's a possible security guarantee for if the war is to get a peace deal is reached. So, we'll see. I think this is going to be cooking though. Uh, but this is going to be cooking over the next few weeks. There's also this minerals deal. Um, uh, that is going on as well, because the U.S. Trump wants Ukraine to give up 50% of the revenues from their rare earth minerals. Zelensky appears open to this, but he doesn't like some of the terms that are being uh, offered right now, and I think they'll eventually get to a deal on it. Trump's national security advisor was on the Sunday shows yesterday, saying that he thought the deal would be reached by the end of the week. So I think that's definitely possible that we could get some of those. The U.S. gets some portion of its rare earth revenues, which you keep an eye on MP and REMX, because those are the rare earth names. To see if there's any reaction there for that. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Obviously Russia started the war, and I think Trump's getting a lot of criticism from both, some within his own party on that, and a lot of we're going to see how that works out. If he's just trying to negotiate, if he doesn't want to upset Putin, if he just wants to try to get the war
Yeah,
ended.
I
Yeah,
guess that's the question. It seems like all
yeah.
the pressure is being put on Zelensky. I mean, what concessions are they pushing from Putin, if any? Doesn't sound
Yeah,
like any.
yeah, it doesn't sound like any right now. I mean, it sounds like the initial like draft of the proposal is like it came exactly from the Kremlin. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, so but I think Putin's not going to get everything he wants. Ukraine's probably not going to get everything they want, but I think it's to be much closer to what Putin wants than what Ukraine wants. Just because, I mean, if you look at the politics of this in the U.S., the war is not very popular. A lot of uh, most Americans want to see it ended, and I think that Trump feels that he can't paint an ending to war, and he's just going to end it no matter what happens, no matter what the Council of Foreign Relations thinks of it. So I think that's going to be what he does, and I think Ukraine. I mean, I do worry though if a deal is reached that's very favorable to Putin, that is somewhere down the line that is emboldened and go after Poland or the Baltics, and that's what you'll hear, right? If a deal is struck that's very favorable to Putin, you're going to hear, okay, this is a gift to Putin. He's going to be emboldened and go after the Baltics. We'll see if that happens, but that's going to be the criticism against the administration.
Yeah. So we'll continue to track that. In the meantime, making a little bit of a run here on the 5 minute chart, as you can see, getting above that 60-20 area. Nice extension of 60-30 at the moment. So we'll keep an eye out. They must like what you're saying there, Carmine. All right. Let's take a look at Congress then.
Not
Of
gonna like what I'm
course.
saying now.
Yeah. Get ready to short here, right? So let's talk about the potential government shutdown for March 14th. What's going to be going on there?
Yeah, so this is a mess. So you have of course you need 60 Senate votes for a funding bill, right? So there's been several senators on the Democratic side that come out and said, hey, we're not going to vote for the fund the government. Uh, we're not going to help the Republicans fund the government. We'll see if they carry that out, but right now I think the chances of government shutdown are pretty high. Because you have a situation in the House too where there's about 40, 50 members of the Republican side who will not vote for any continuing resolution, right? Unless there's offsets, right? Which is not going to happen. So, but the Democrats won't agree to that for 60, right? So, so I think right now, I mean, we're kind of rolling towards a shutdown on March 14th. We'll see how long it lasts. But I think that there's going to be a lot of consternation, of course, about Doge and about the a lot of the health agencies that were cut, a lot of the foreign aid that was cut, and I think the Democrats are going to push to try to get a lot of that funding back. It wasn't really taken out yet, but they're going to try to push to make sure it's continue to be funded, and that's not going to sit well with the Republicans, right? So right now, I think the chances of a government shutdown are probably 75% or so. But we'll see how things work out as we get closer to March 14th.
All right. Now, the House budget, they did pass the reconciliation resolution. So did the Senate, correct?
Yeah, so it's getting a little confusing here. There's a lot of
Yeah.
bills, so let me
Yeah.
try to.
So let's square that peg for the audience here.
Yeah, exactly. So the Senate passed a two-track approach, right? So they passed a bill that just has to deal with immigration, energy, and defense. The resolution for that one. That passed 52-48. The only one who voted against it was Rand Paul. Rand Paul basically votes against anything that's not offset, right? He doesn't care what it is; it has to be offset. So
Nothing wrong with
uh,
that.
well, yeah, I mean, if that's, I mean, at least he's consistent. I mean, he did the same thing when
Yeah.
Biden was president. He did the same thing when Trump is president. So, so uh, we're not going to get his vote, but we're pretty much going to get everybody else, right? So, in the Senate's really not the problem. So. The House has said they're not going to put that bill up for a vote yet because they have their own bill, right? So the House Budget Committee last week passed the reconciliation resolution for what they call the one big beautiful bill. The tax cuts, immigration, energy, defense spending, various spending cuts, largely on Medicaid, and increase in the debt ceiling, all rolled into one bill. The House Rules Committee is gonna take this up tonight, and then the full House is gonna vote tomorrow. Uh, my guess right now is that it passes, but it's going to be messy. It's going to be really, really close, probably by one vote. So, um, if they do pass it, I think that'll be kind of a good win for the administration because, but there's still a long way to go on this, right? Because this is just the resolution to get the ball started, right? What the resolution is for reconciliation, think of it as the key that opens the door, right? This is the kind of key that unlocks the reconciliation process where you could get 50 votes in the Senate, right? So uh, that's kind of what they're doing now. Once they open the door with the key, then they build the actual bill, and that's when it's going to be a lot of consternation, right? Because you're going to have the budget hawks wanting more cuts, and you're going to want the moderates saying that we don't want to cut as much, right? So they're going to Johnson's going to have to square that circle in order to get that bill through the finish line here. Uh, but right now, I think the resolution, which is the first step tomorrow night, will pass. And then either they could claim a little bit of a victory, but again, there's a long way to go on this. So this is going to be going on for months and months.
Okay. Last thing on our docket here, Carmine. Um, the Doge dividend. What's
Yeah,
going on with that?
The Doge dividend. So, President Trump's considering a plan to give 20% of the Department of Government savings back to the taxpayers and 20% to pay down debt. My question would be, what's the other 60% for? So, but in any event, the White House wants this included in the reconciliation bill. Speaker Mike Johnson was at the Conservative Political Action Conference, better known as CPAC, over the weekend, and he was asked about the Doge dividend, and he kind of threw cold water on it. He's saying, we're conservatives here, we want to, pay down the debt and so forth. So, I don't think this is going to happen. I would be very surprised if it's included, but it's something that would be popular. But I don't think it would be pass muster with the budget hawks. So I don't think it's going to happen.
All right. Carmine, anything else that we failed to address here today?
That's pretty much it.
Hello?
That's pretty much it.
All right. Well, hey, Carmine, okay. Can you hear me okay over there,
Yeah, I
Carmine?
can hear you. I think that's pretty much it.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, great. Well, thank you very much for coming on and chatting with us here. Always appreciate you taking the time to update us. If anybody's got any questions on anything, obviously feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk to follow up with you. But Carmine, you take care and you have a great rest of the day here.